Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our How to Crowdfund Successfully for your community, keeping them physically active. We've been joined today by Lucy Gola from Sport England, who'll be talking through the really exciting grant funding opportunity available as part of the Movement Fund. And we've also been joined by Jasmine and Sarah from Penniwells Riding Centre for the Disabled to talk through their recent crowdfunding project as part of that Movement Fund. So you'll be able to hear all about their experience, maybe get some inspiration, some advice on how to maybe go about either applying for the Movement Fund or carrying on with your application and setting your project live, and ultimately raising the money that you need in order to make your idea happen. Before we get started on the main body of the content, there's just a little bit of housekeeping to go over. So we have allowed 60 minutes for this session. That does include a Q&A at the end. If you'd like to ask a question, please do make use of the chat box, which you should see along the bottom of your toolbar in your in your webinar at the moment. On your screen is what I'm trying to say. I've popped a few messages in there. It'd be really great if you can continue to use that throughout the session. Let's try and keep it as interactive as possible. You can use that to introduce yourselves, let us know whereabouts you're joining us from, maybe what organisation you're representing, or your project idea even. This session is live. However, it is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the replay of this webinar as part of a follow-up email that we'll send out to you after the event. You'll be able to rewatch this with your colleagues, volunteers, friends, be able to use the resources that we have as well. We'll make sure we send links to those to get you up and running with everything you need to run a successful crowdfunding campaign. If you do find that you have any issues with your internet connection, you can exit the webinar and then follow the link to join again, which you should find in your confirmation email. You will come straight back into the live session. You might find, however, that you've lost any of the chat box up until the point that you left the room. So do just pop a message in there and we can bring you up to speed with anything that you've missed. You can also use the Q&A box, which you'll find again in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, to ask any direct questions for the Q&A at the end. Now, if you find that you can see the slide, but actually I'm hovering over the top of it, what you might want to do is just select side by side speaker view. And that's if you go to the top right of your screen, you should see the view option. Click on that and change to side by side speaker, and that will remove the panelists from the slide itself. Okay, so it would be really great to get a bit of an understanding as to who we have with us in the room. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll. What I would really like to know is your experience of crowdfunding. So how many of you have crowdfunded before? Maybe some of you have donated to a crowdfunding campaign. Maybe some of you have an idea what it is, but you've not used it yourselves, or maybe some of you have very little idea of what crowdfunding is. That will give us a good idea of how much in depth we need to go about the concept, or if we're talking to people that are pros at crowdfunding. Okay. Fabulous. Right. So at the moment, we've got a really nice, healthy mix. Some of you have little knowledge, and that's absolutely fine. A few of you have even got a draft project on the site. So a really good cross section of expertise. Thank you so much for those that have answered that one. Okay, let's start at the beginning then, for those that have little to kind of no knowledge of crowdfunding as a concept. The idea of crowdfunding is essentially going out to your crowd or your community and your networks and bringing in donations in order to raise the money that you need to get a project or an idea happening. Now, you may be familiar with the different crowdfunding platforms that exist. So there are many out there, the Just Givings, the Kickstarters, the GoFundMes of the world. Crowdfunder UK is who we are. We were set up around 11 years ago now. And the idea of Crowdfunder UK is we have a couple of different unique selling points that set us aside from those other fundraising platforms. One of them being is that we have the ability for projects to offer rewards as part of their campaign. So a reward is a benefit of some kind in return for a financial contribution. We'll look at what those kinds of rewards could be a bit further on in the session, but what you're thinking is maybe it's a product or a service or a pay it forward reward where somebody's actually maybe sponsoring an element of the delivery of the project and the program. So how it works in its simplest terms is you would first of all set up an account, a free account with us on crowdfunder.co.uk. You then go on to create your unique page. So that is your opportunity to tell your story. So you talk about your organization, you talk about your project ideas and your project aims. You'd explain your idea to your potential crowd and your potential supporters. You'd also set a target. So, how much money do you need to raise? And then you decide how long you would like to run your project for in order to raise that money towards your target. You have complete control over all of those things. We always recommend when setting your target that you're thinking about a realistic amount. So, what is the minimum that you might need to get your project off the ground and running? And think about the size of your community around you and your crowd and how many people you could actually reach out to in order to generate those donations. When you think about your page as well, you need to really put yourself in the kind of the place of your supporters. You need to really talk to them in a person-centric way and make it really engaging. And we'll look at an example of a really great project page further on in today's webinar too. You can then add rewards if you would like to. You can always just raise money through donations. That's absolutely fine. We do find, though, having a selection of rewards can really amplify the amount of money that you're raising. It can help to engage different demographics of the community who might spot something on there that actually they feel is a really great reward for them to actually incentivize them to give to your campaign, especially those from the wider community who might not have as much as a close relationship with your project delivery or might not even benefit from your project. Think about extra funding. So that's what we're here to talk about primarily today. We work with lots of different extra funding partners across the country. Look at what's available around you. Could you apply for extra funding to, again, amplify your fundraising potential? So be creative with those rewards. Reach out to your network and source a variety of rewards from those around you and check all of the different extra funding opportunities that we have to see what you might be eligible for. And then you would go on to launch your project. You'd set your project live on our website, and it would be up to you then to promote that project page to your friends, your family, and your networks, all your contacts that you can kind of source throughout your crowd and your community. You will be promoting that page too in order to generate those digital donations onto your crowdfunding page. Now, something that not everybody considers when they're thinking about fundraising and crowdfunding is, of course, you need to raise the money to make your idea happen. However, there are lots of added benefits that come along with doing it in this way. First of all, there's validation. So by creating a crowdfunding page and setting it live, you're going to not only build confidence in your own idea because you put it out there to the world and you're getting some great feedback, but you're also going to help to build confidence from your community in actually seeing this project come to life. So they will very quickly let you know if this is something that has validation that they want to see happen. So it can be a really low risk way of testing the water to see if your idea is going to land well and actually is needed within your community. Can help build awareness. So by launching a project, you can get a real sense of excitement around your project delivery. It can create a buzz and get people excited about waiting to see, waiting in the wings to see when this is going to come to fruition. There's brilliant ways that you can keep in contact with your supporters through your crowdfunding campaign page. We give you access to supporter details if they've opted into being contacted by yourselves. You can post updates to your page which will be emailed out to them as well. So it's a brilliant way to create an engaged audience waiting to see just what happens when that project comes to life. And you may well get noticed by a wider audience, and we will show you how to actually engage with that wider audience and promote kind of beyond your core demographic and maybe your service users or participants, the people who you would normally kind of be in contact with day to day as part of the organization. Everybody that does donate to a campaign will automatically become an advocate. You will see this through comments of support, through people resharing your promotion on things like social media, by maybe volunteering and offering their time to help you, just generally kind of being there, supporting in the wings. We at Crowdfunder we're advocates for certain projects as well that resonate with us. Just like today, inviting projects onto webinars so that we can help boost the kind of awareness around what they're doing, and help spread their message far and wide. There are always projects that land within our world that really just resonate and engage with us as individuals, and that will happen within your community as well. You will learn new skills. You might find that you don't have a huge amount of experience when it comes to maybe networking or creating engaging content for your project page, or maybe social media promotion. These are all things that we can help you with through the resources and the tools that we have on our website, and that we can communicate with you in order to really build your confidence and get you crowdfunding successfully. And these skills can be really transferable into different areas of your organization as well, and they can really help to embed and implement within your fundraising strategy going forward. And of course, the extra funding that we have on offer, which we're going to talk about shortly. So we work with national and regional partners, corporate partners, governing bodies, local authorities, and we have more than £10 million worth of match funding available from those partners that can be distributed through eligible projects through a simple application process and successful crowdfunding campaigns. And we'll talk about specifically the Movement Fund from Sport England very shortly. Now, when it comes to sports and physical activity, we know that crowdfunding works incredibly well. There are a few reasons for this. You have a ready-made crowd. If you are already delivering physical activity or sport, you will find that you have existing participants, existing members. You may well have a committee and a board as part of your organization. They are your core crowd. That's where you're always going to start your promotion, is at your ready-made crowd at your fingertips. You all have a shared passion. You've all been brought together with a common goal, which is to enjoy and participate in this particular physical activity or sport. So utilize that, draw upon people's passion to actually kind of put that into the project and help you get to where you need to. This is a collaborative endeavor. So wherever possible, bring in a team of people, put the feelers out, put a call out when you're thinking about crowdfunding to make sure you're utilizing people's skills wherever possible, and try not to do this as a solo venture. Try and have people you can lean upon. It does make it more enjoyable, more straightforward, and it's a great way to give a bit of ownership as well to the people around you in the organization, and maybe even club members or people participating. More than likely, you're already known within your community. We know that sports clubs and organizations that are delivering physical activity quite often are at the hub of a community. You will often already be posting in kind of the local Facebook groups. You might have links with the local schools, for example. You will have an element of already being known and being able to work on that and being able to draw upon the networks that you already have. You can set really exciting fundraising challenges and activities to get the wider community involved in what you're doing, and again, those existing participants. And by being known in the community, the chances are your network is actually quite large. So when it comes to sourcing rewards and having people share your crowdfunding campaign on your behalf, that puts you a little bit ahead of others that are trying to do that as well. Now, depending on what your sport or physical activity is, there might well be an alumni attached to your club or your organization. There could even be some celebrity sports personalities that you might want to reach out to in order for them to maybe share or reshare some of the content and your page within their networks. So it's never too kind of extravagant to think about, well, who can we try and contact to actually push this out wider? There's been some really interesting ones over the years and some celebrities that have actually made donations onto specific sports campaigns and physical activity campaigns. So it's a subject matter that does resonate really strongly with a large proportion of the community, and that does include celebrities as well. And then, of course, you will have some really wonderful community impact already. Focus on that when it comes to your project pages, highlight the great things that you do already, and build upon that when it comes to creating and sharing your message. Just some numbers before we move on to meeting our guest speakers for today. So, over the years that we've been working with our sports partners, we have helped distribute more than 11.3 million pounds of funding to those organisations that have been eligible, and that's just looking at our sports partners. So at the moment that would be Sport England, Sport Northern Ireland, Sport Wales. We have worked with British Cycling in the past as well. We've seen more than 700,000 projects come through our platform in that time, with more than 440 supporters, so individuals that are getting behind those. I mean, realistically, those are grassroots projects as well. So relatively small organisations having more than 440,000 supporters is really exciting. And we've seen them raise more than 38.5 million pounds between them. So it's a brilliant opportunity for you to get involved in this story and be part of these numbers going forwards. There's a really great opportunity and an exciting challenge ahead of you to be able to access the extra funding and actually be able to have all of those benefits that I talked about at the beginning too. Now, a project that have recently done everything that I've just mentioned incredibly successfully is the Penniwells Riding Centre for the Disabled. And we're lucky enough today to be joined by Jasmine Pearson and Sarah Healing, who are here to represent that organisation and tell us a little bit more about their project. Jasmine and Sarah, are you there?
We are. Hello.
We are. Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's really lovely to have you both here. We can see on the slide just a little bit of a snapshot of your recent crowdfunding campaign. And I will also I will actually launch it now if I can. Let me just have a look. You should see a resource pop up for everybody, and you can click on that and it will actually be the link to the project page. So do go away and have a look at that as well, because it's a really exciting page and a really wonderful and impactful project. Would you mind telling me a little bit about your project, please?
Okay. So we're Penniwells Riding for the Disabled Centre. So we're a full-time centre giving therapy and horse riding sessions to about 140 people every week. And we have a horse simulator. So we fundraised for him 8 years ago and managed to achieve that. And we've had him in a normal stable up until now. But really he's outgrown his space. So we were finding we're a bit cramped. And also he was restricted for access. And being a disabled riding centre, we felt this was an area we really needed to put right. So our project was to build him a new house and move him kind of just less than 20 yards away, but into a new building where we could also have wheelchair access and fit a hoist so that we could expand the project and actually open this up to a lot more people and make him fully accessible.
Amazing. And such a worthwhile thing to be doing. Why did you decide to crowdfund as a route to raising the money?
So I think we really struggled after COVID, and as a charity financially, it kind of felt like it couldn't be a priority because we were just fighting so hard to keep our heads above water already. A few people mentioned crowdfunding, and I sort of floated it to Jasmine, and we sort of tried to find out as much as we could. And we thought actually this would be a really good incentive if we can say to people, if you can donate money, we can match it somehow through crowdfunding. And I think that was probably the original incentive that got us looking down that route. Jasmine can probably elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jasmine. Yeah, I think the one real benefit to crowdfunding and a decision why we wanted to go through it is because most traditional forms of grant giving, it is generally quite a long process in terms of from when you apply through to when you get the award. With crowdfunding, it's a much shorter process. In fact, you set that parameter. We set an 8-week parameter for the period that we want to run our campaign. It suggested you have it shorter, and I'll talk later on about why we went to 8 weeks and not 6. But also what that allows us to do is in terms of if you're asking for, we raised £31,000, which is amazing in total. But if you're going to an individual grant giver, there is a lot of paperwork involved, not just in the grant process, but also in terms of the report back. For small organisations like Penniwells, like I'm a volunteer. Sarah's one of 3 coaches. We have 60 volunteers on our board. We don't have the time to be able to give that level. We don't have an employed fundraiser. So first of all, it was a significant amount of funds raised across a short period of time, and reduced amount of reporting back. I think the other thing that it allowed us to do was reach, use our networks for our volunteer community, through our riders' families, to get our message out. Also in terms of corporate supporter, we had a corporate supporter, which is an area we're trying to develop, who came on board, who posted on their LinkedIn. So yeah, it was a great way to get funding really quickly and to raise profile.
And you did an incredible job of it. And as you've mentioned, it's very heavily kind of volunteer centered, like with you guys at the riding centre. And that can be a real challenge, can't it? When people might be working jobs outside of this as well and trying to find the time to do all of these bits. So you did a really incredible job, and you should be incredibly proud of what you've done. Did you find anything difficult about the process? Kind of tell me about the highs and potentially maybe some of the hurdles that you faced.
I think the beginning was hard, actually, just navigating our way around the information and finding the right information. It took us a while, didn't it, Jasmine? I think to sort of pin down what we were really looking for and how it worked. We were quite confused at the beginning as to how it worked and how the match funding kicked in and that process. We did a lot of research before we even got to putting our page together or anything, just to find out and try and work it out, because I think we were a bit confused, weren't we, Jasmine? Right at the beginning, it took a while.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you go onto crowdfunding page, they kind of match you with partners. Some of that was a little bit misleading, because actually, and I have a professional fundraising background, so I'm used to looking at things and identifying, yes, this is an opportunity. No, this is an opportunity. But if you don't have that background, I could see where that could be a little bit of a challenge. Because, for example, we were matched with 3 different partners. Sports England, obvious fit. We knew that's who we wanted to go for. But I think there were 2 other partners there that weren't so relevant to us. One worked in environment, and then one worked in I can't remember who the partner was now, but I think it was a government pot of funding. So if you didn't have that experience, you might find that a bit more challenging. So that initially we weren't quite sure which direction we were going to go in, but then obviously Sports England is really a clear. It was really clear to us. Also, the transition between crowdfunding and our match partner, Sports England. When we first started looking at crowdfunding, they had another grant called Acted Together, and then that grant finished, and then the new grant, which we're working with, which is, I should know this top of my head, but when you're on a call, the movement fund, sorry, I've written that enough times in applications. Yeah, so there was a transition. Well, what that meant is actually, in terms of using the crowdfunding platform and then going through the process to transfer through to Sports England, there were a few functionality issues there. So that led us to a position where we ended up going live before we'd got our match funding okayed. So, but the feedback from Sports England, I worked with one of their investment advisors there, and she was really brilliant. So we actually did get our match funding agreed and retrospectively given to us, because we'd already had £5,000 on our match fund campaign. So there were a few little functionality transitional issues, but Sports England were amazing and recognised this, and yeah, they were Becky Evans who we dealt with, who was brilliant. So yeah, we kind of navigated that.
Amazing. Shout out to Becky. And I think we talked, didn't we, before we went live with the call? And you're right, there's been a transition from one fund into a different fund. And you guys applied very early on, didn't you, with that new fund? And so we've been working, taking on feedback, and I'm happy to say that it's a much more streamlined process a few months down the line from when you guys first applied. And I'm really glad that you had somebody like Becky to be able to work through those kind of teething issues with, and it all kind of came good in the end because it's such a wonderful project. In terms of so things like rewards, did you have something in mind when it came to kind of adding a reward onto the page, or was that something that was prompted that you thought, okay, now we need to put this on there as part of this kind of match funding pledge agreement?
Yeah,
Did you
we
always
we
think we'll add
we
something
were
on?
always aware of the rewards, having seen other projects and things in the past. We were slightly concerned about offering things we couldn't keep up with. We were a little bit, oh, we're not quite sure what to give as rewards. So we kept it very simple in the end, actually. A lot of it was giving them a mention on the website, inviting them to the opening when we've finished the project. I think if they were over £1,000 donation, they get a free ride on Eddie once he's moved house, things like that, because they were all things we could keep control of very easily. We were slightly worried if we were giving things or needed to send things that area because of the time and everything as well. We just felt actually let's keep it simple. And actually, I think what has come out of it from our end is people didn't do it for the rewards. It wasn't something that they were chasing after or really worrying about. It was more that they just wanted to actually donate to the cause and the project.
I think that's great, and that's really identifying what works for you. You don't want to put yourself in a position where actually you're giving yourself loads of work post kind of crowdfunding campaign. If you've got capacity, brilliant. Reach out to different businesses, be sending things, doing all of those different things. But actually, for you guys, being a small charity, keeping things at a point and at a level where you can deliver quite easily without having to kind of go over capacity. And if you've got lots of volunteers as well, you need to be reliant on their ability to come along and help with all of this. So yeah, it works really well for you, and that's great. And people will just give because you've got a great project idea and they really, really respond to your project aims. Sometimes rewards can just be a great way to signpost people to a price point, to kind of say, well, actually, here's a few ideas of the types of amounts that you could be donating to us, because everything is going to help, but here's a bit of a suggestion, um, which was brilliant. And that was great to see on yours as well. So just quickly then, I mentioned some of those added benefits at the beginning of the session. Have you found, since running the crowdfunding campaign and now that you've ended the campaign, have you found that you have been the recipient of any of those benefits? Maybe some raised awareness around what you're doing. Maybe there has been people that have come out and said, well, actually, we'd like to get involved somewhere further down the line, increased volunteers. Have you noticed any of those benefits?
I think definitely it's increased the awareness of us being here, in the local community, without a doubt, are waiting to see how the project's going to be, particularly be having a hoist that opens us up to a whole new kind of area of clientele to come, because they'll be able to access this horse, whereas they can't access the live horses if they can't be getting on and if they're not safe to ride them, but actually they can sit on here with a lot of support from us. So we're going to be offering a whole new kind of base, really, and I think they're keeping a close eye on when we're ready to go on that. So it definitely has increased that. I think Jasmine can talk about the corporate side, but I think it's had a knock on in lots of areas, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the crowdfunding campaign, as I mentioned earlier, has allowed us to go out really quickly to a whole new area and network of people. We also made sure that we put a call to action on our profile page, so that when those messages were sent out, when our link was sent out, asking everybody to then the knock-on effect and put it onto their networks on social media as well. So that's something that can be done really quickly and really slick, which was brilliant. Yeah, I think it's how, in terms of corporate partners, there's certainly an area that we want to look at developing relations with, from a voluntary perspective, but also for funding. One of the things that the campaign enabled us to do was really strengthen a relationship with a corporate partner that we have, that's local to us, that actually donated £2,500 via the crowdfund. What it helped to do is take them on the journey with us, because what they were doing was they would be seeing the alerts coming through as the money raised, moves up, which was great. I think the other thing it does is it's giving direct feedback from either our riders or our service users or from families, and they're getting a real emotive feel for how powerful the work that we do. And that was really good for us to see that direct feedback from beneficiaries of our work. Businesses also really like the fact that you can turn their £2,500 into £5,000. It shows good business acumen on the part of the charity, and it kind of encourages them to work with us again in the future because they can see we're working smart as well as hard. So yeah, it was great.
That's so lovely to hear. And something that I am really such an advocate for as well is so many, I should say, grant applications, or when you're writing funding bids, it all happens behind closed doors. And actually, as a service user or a potential kind of advocate or partner, you don't really get to see all of that hard work until it comes to fruition. And you might not be aware of that journey for that organization or the charity. Whereas doing it this way, everything is kind of there. And the public and the supporters feel part of the journey with you and actually feel a sense of kind of ownership of helping you to get there. And I think that's really lovely. And I know from being a supporter of many projects as well and donating, I love getting those notification emails to say, we've raised X amount more, or this has happened today, like those lovely updates where you're keeping people kind of informed as to what's going on. So that's really, really lovely to hear that you had such a positive experience with that side of things. We're going to move on and speak to Lucy about the fund itself. Would you both be happy to stick with us in the wings for the Q&A at the end? Because I'm sure we'll have some questions coming through for both of you. And thank you so much. It's really such a great project. I do advise everyone to go and take a look at it.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Hi, Lucy. How are you doing?
Hi, Zoe. I'm good, thank you.
Just pulling up the Sport England slide to let everybody know exactly where you're from. So Lucy's joining us from Sport England, and you are going to talk through the Movement Fund, if that's okay.
Yeah. So my role within Sport England is alongside my day-to-day job as an investment advisor. So I work on the funding help desk. I'll pop the phone number and email into the chat shortly. So you can phone us up, ask us any queries you've got regarding the Movement Fund or anything else we've got going on. I work specifically on the crowdfunding side of our Movement Fund. So I would be working alongside Becky, who supported Penniwells, and we've got a few other team members as well on the phone. So we can talk about crowdfunding as well, and support you with creating the page and how to get the best out of that. So in terms of the Movement Fund, as the guys at Penniwells just mentioned, it was a slight move away from Active Together, which was our previous crowdfunding offer, which had a bit more sort of post-COVID general support, support with core costs and things like that going on. Whereas the Movement Fund is probably a little bit more specific, where it is looking at supporting those who perhaps may have a barrier to getting active, supporting those going from inactive to active, and we've got priority audiences. As with all funding streams, we have a limited amount of money and we're trying to support as many people as we can. So each project could receive up to £15,000. From an application perspective, you can come in through what we call our front door, which is just through our normal application process. And the result from that could be a grant or a pledge towards a crowdfunding campaign. So we are working really hard to sort of be able to promote and show people, look at all the benefits you can get from doing crowdfunding. Now, Penniwells, I think, came in through our side door, which was slightly different, as they were explaining you when you're setting up your draft campaign page, it takes you through, as you're drafting, it sort of highlights, oh, you could be eligible for this, you could be eligible for that. And it's at that side of things that you can then tell us, okay, this is our project, this is why we need it, this is what we're trying to work towards. So we at Sport England want to hear things like, who's going to benefit? Why do you know that it's needed? How are you going to make it happen? What are the barriers for this audience that you're working with to them getting active and supporting that physical activity? And also what level of sustainability is involved? Because obviously with some delivery of projects, we can't repeat fund year on year. So organisations can apply to receive up to £15,000 over a 12-month period. As I said, we have got our normal route through, which takes you could receive a grant or you could receive a pledge, or you have got via the crowdfunder page. So anyone who's already got a crowdfunding page in draft, you will probably be highlighted to the movement fund. And I can see there's Nick in the chat has mentioned that, so I can respond to that shortly. So either way, we will then assess that application, make sure that what you are asking for is meeting the priorities for the movement fund. It can support delivery type projects, or like the Penniwells project, it can support smaller scale facility type projects. So it can support accessibility improvements to a site. It can support small building arrangements. It can support not just the, oh, we need new showers, this is what we need. We need to know, how do you know that you need those new showers? What have been the barriers? What is preventing this from working? What is stopping this from happening? So as Sarah was talking about, the previous location for the mechanical horse was, it was in a stable. Stables aren't massive. If you're going to have a few people wandering in, if you're going to have coaches in there as well, getting on the horse, if you haven't got a hoist, is a challenge, and that takes up quite a lot of space. So actually, straight away, the mechanical horse is no longer as accessible as he could have been. So that is kind of what we were funding, and that is why it came across as a really good project that we wanted to invest in.
Fabulous. Thank you, Lucy. So if anybody wants to find out more about the Movement Fund, I have switched on that resource tab, so you can go straight to the Movement Fund and find out more about the eligibility criteria. And Lucy's going to stick around, aren't you, Lucy, as well for the Q&A? So do feel free, as Nick has, to pop any questions into the chat box, and we can have Lucy answer those a little bit later on. Thank you so much. We will see you shortly. Okay, so Lucy mentioned there as well about those two different routes to accessing the fund. So of course you can go directly to Sport England, go to their website, you can apply for the movement fund that way, and you will be triaged. Sport England will triage you into either a straightforward grant situation or signpost you through to a pledge agreement with a crowdfunding campaign attached. However, for the moment, I'm going to focus on that crowdfunder route into the fund, the same way that Jasmine and Sarah did at Penniwells. So they had a draft campaign already set up on our page, on our website. The process of doing that, there will be some basic questions that you're being asked. It'll be things like whereabouts you are in the country, the setup of your organisation, so whether you are a profit organisation, whether you're a profit with purpose like a CIC or a charity or an individual. All of these bits of information will allow the computer system to match you with any relevant funding partners that we think you may be eligible for. Now, this all becomes part of that extra funding offer. So what you will see in your kind of admin of your page is all of the funding partners that you've been matched with. Some of them, as Jasmine and Sarah pointed out, might not be a good fit for your project. And what you can actually do now is just dismiss that fund, and you can remove it from your dashboard, so it's not sat there kind of confusing matters. However, what you can do is apply directly through your project dashboard. It's a very straightforward application. We normally say to people, allow kind of maybe 15 minutes or so to complete that application. And our funding partners tend to look at that application as well as the information that you're already starting to put on your project page, so they can get a real sense of who you are and what you're raising the money for. Now, let's say in this scenario that you have applied for your Sport England Movement Fund, you've applied for money towards your project, and you've been approved. So now what you're going to do is you have that pledge award you've been offered, and you've accepted that. You're going to go live with your project, and you're going to start raising money from your crowd. There's a milestone that you need to reach in order to actually release that pledge from Sport England onto your crowdfunding page. So first of all, you're going to go live and you're going to start raising donations from your core network. So that's going to be friends, family, club members, participants, service users and their families. So everybody that's really close to the project. You need to raise 25% of your initial target. And don't forget, you've set that target yourself by a required amount of supporters. So that's individuals that are making those donations. Once you've hit that first milestone, Sport England become a supporter and they pledge the amount that they've agreed with you onto your crowdfunding page. You will see suddenly the amount that you've raised leap up by the amount of the Sport England pledge. You'll have a lovely banner on your page as well to say that this project has been supported by Sport England for X amount of money. And you will use that information to go back to your crowd, use it as momentum to actually drive more pledges and more engagement to your crowdfunding page. And you would be responsible for then raising the shortfall, if you like. So you need to continue raising money until you hit 100% of your target. So you raise 25%, Sport England pledge potentially that 50%, and then you raise that additional 25% as well. So there's a 50 to 50 match fund. Now, if you've still got some time left live on your campaign, you might decide to set something we call a stretch target, which enables you to raise above and beyond that initial target. And that can just be a really lovely additional goal for your supporters to work towards. You'll be prompted to add a little bit of text in there as well to say what that extra money is going towards. But it can be a really nice opportunity to raise money towards kind of all of those added extras that can make a project really sing. But do remember that you must hit 100% of your target to secure that pledge from Sport England, along with the money that you've raised from the crowd. Okay, we've talked lots about crowds and networks today. This is a really great example of what we would call a network map. So the best way to be engaging your crowd effectively is actually to break it up into bite-sized chunks and think about who falls within these different areas of your community and how you're going to reach out to them effectively. So I mentioned there that kind of core network. So that's friends and family, service users, existing supporters maybe. So that might be people that you have as part of a newsletter, existing members. That's going to be the first group of people that you're reaching out to and building that momentum to bring in donations. Beyond that, you want to be thinking about different sports organizations and clubs within your area, different maybe charities, referral agencies, depending on who your demographic is. Start thinking about partners as well. So that might be corporate partners, as in the case of Penniwells. It could be people that you partnership with because actually they maybe lease the space that you have to actually deliver. It could be that you rent a space to deliver your physical activity. So start thinking about those venues. Think about stockists, merchandise suppliers, all of these different people that fall into that kind of partner category. Obviously, there's social media, which can be really useful. So Facebook, X, TikTok, even Instagram, wherever you have a decent following, that's the social media platforms that will work best for you. Your community at large, so schools, community events, community networking events, maybe there's a chamber of commerce around your area as well. And then also be thinking about local press, local radio. Is a great thing to engage them at different points of the campaign. So maybe as part of some warm-up communication to say, you know, this organization is launching a crowdfunder, watch this space, or coming soon. And then maybe once you've actually been, you know, once you've hit that first milestone and the Sport England pledge has landed, that's a great time to have a bit of a media shout out. And then right towards the kind of deadline as well. So as the closing date is approaching and you need that final push, maybe out to a wider audience to bring in those final donations, that's a really great time as well to have the local media outlets getting involved, because they can really see the urgency, and also people looking at your campaign at that stage that might not be as closely connected with it will see that their donation's going to make a big difference and it's going to help you get across that line and hit your target. So some real key timings when it comes to engaging local press and radio, but really, really useful to your campaign. And here's just a bit of a snapshot of those required supporter numbers as it stands with the fund at the moment. So depending on how much you're looking to raise, so your target, you would need, in order to release that pledge as part of the first milestone, you would need to have support from this amount of individual supporters on the right of this table here. Okay, we've mentioned as well other funding partners, and you can piggyback match funds up on your page. So you could be supported by Sport England and your local authority, for example, if they feature as one of our funding partners. So always check the extra funding available as part of the planning section when you're thinking about crowdfunding. That way you can get a real good idea of the eligibility criteria that our funding partners have and whether your project does actually sit within more than one of our funding partners' kind of eligibilities. Apply for all of them that you think would be a good fit as part of your planning process as well while your project is in draft mode, and you may well be fortunate enough to be supported by more than one of our partners. The link to the extra funding page is here on the slide. It's in the resources tab as well, and we will send it through as part of our follow-up communications after the event. Okay, so when it comes to telling your story, it's really important to keep your page really engaging. You might know everything there is to know about your organisation and your physical activity. However, the person that you're communicating with might not know. So try not to just direct your project page at those that are already involved with what you do. Try and think more broad spectrum and think about having two kind of separate narratives, if you like. So telling two intertwining stories. One is aimed at those that already know you and you're connecting with them on that kind of personal level because they already have some kind of involvement. The other is to think about people who are just finding out about you through your crowdfunding campaign. So a little bit of background is great, a little bit of history. Information about your community impact is really key. So what is it that you do that has that positive impact on the people around you and as part of the community? Why are you raising money? What is the money going to be spent on? How much do you need? These are all really key elements of your page. If you can put a video on there, in order to get all of that message across in a really short amount of time, that can be really, really useful, especially for people viewing it who are short on time. That might be the hook that gets them to make that donation. Ultimately, think about keeping it with lots of images. Showcase people wherever possible. People do resonate with other people, so keep a human interest element to your page and try and keep it really nice and engaging. Lots of headings, lots of areas of bold text where you're bringing out bits of key information, maybe putting some links in there to your website or to different areas where there's more information around what you do, but keeping it punchy and engaging is the key. Here are a few examples of rewards. So it's great to try and get inventive with these. Think about the things you can deliver yourselves that you have capacity for, much like Penniwells did. You can have things like pay it forward rewards. So if you know how much an area of the delivery is going to cost, you can always kind of dress that up as a reward. So we've had things in the past where charities have put up, we don't really have anything that we can offer, but what we like to do is at the end of a session, we really like to provide tea and cake for our volunteers. That's a great reward. If you were to say to somebody, actually, if you donate £7, that means that we can buy a coffee and a cake for one of our hardworking volunteers at the end of a session. That signposts somebody like myself to click on that reward, knowing that, okay, I know £7 is actually going to make a difference to that volunteer. So that's what I'm going to claim, and that's how much I'm going to give. So it can be incentivizing for your supporters because they're getting something that they would like. It can also be a great way to just say, well, actually, here's something that you can give us X amount of money for, and this is exactly what it's going to pay for. And that can really help to signpost them to those different price points. What you can do as well which is a really exciting way to give people ownership of helping you raise your target, of getting to your target, is becoming what we call a multiplier crowdfunding campaign. And ultimately, what you're doing is allowing people to fundraise on your behalf. And this can work really well if you've got the capacity to maybe set a fundraising challenge, or you're having a specific day as part of your campaign where you're going to be running some fundraising activity, or maybe just reaching out to local community groups, local schools, to see if they might get involved as well. And you can see with the Brighton Surf Lifesaving project, because of the nature of what they do, they had different people get involved and actually do sponsored swims, raising a really nice amount of money towards their target. It can help increase your network because they will promote their fundraisers to their networks, increasing your supporter numbers and increasing the amount that you're raising for your project. It's a really straightforward process. They are linked to your main project. These fundraisers, they don't need to enter any of their financial details. Everything gets funneled straight onto your page. So it can be a really good opportunity to really boost and maximize your fundraising potential. Now, to help you get there, we have a huge amount of resource and support available for you. We have webinars such as this one that happen frequently. We have Q&A drop-in sessions, so you can come along and speak to a member of Crowdfunder. We have a really wonderful knowledge hub, which is full of all sorts of guides, hints and tips on how to do this successfully. Once you sign up, you'll start receiving tailored email advice, signposting you in the right directions to make the most of our platform, and obviously accessing extra funding and all of those types of things. We have a great customer support team that have actually created all of the help center. So they've written all of those guides. So the answers 9 times out of 10 will be in the help center. If you do need any additional support beyond that, you can contact them directly. And you can manage every aspect of your campaign through the live project dashboard. Okay, we have gone through a huge amount of content today. Thank you so much for being here with us. It would be great to welcome all of our panelists, all of our guests back onto screen, and we can go through some of the questions that have been coming through in the chat box. I can see, Lucy, that you've been in conversation as well in the chat box, which is brilliant. Just to kind of bring Nick's question out. So they have been awarded for the movement fund. Can they still match fund from others, or is there restrictions in place with the movement fund? What's the kind of Sport England take on running that crowdfunding campaign and maybe receiving other match funding towards that?
Wholeheartedly support it. The more you can get for your project, the better. So I guess what's key is just ensuring that your crowdfunding campaign page does have covers both. So the movement fund, environmental sustainability is an element of something we want to support. It might not be necessarily our sort of key priority, but it is absolutely something we would like people to be able to consider. So whether that's just greater efficiencies around the site, solar panels, LED lights, better heating systems, all of those kinds of things which are going to make your organisation more cost effective going forwards. And ultimately, how can the cost savings you make support physical activity and get more people active? So that's where our stance would be. However, I know for a fact that Aviva Community Fund are on there with 2 priorities for them at the moment, one of which is environmental and climate change type projects. So if you are making a facility change that meets their criteria as well, brilliant, go for it. And we've seen quite a few that are also getting that live match funding from Aviva. So they operate slightly different to us in that we will put one big pledge on, whereas someone like Aviva will have matched funding. So as someone puts £10 on, they will also put their £10 on. So you'll see that building almost instantly. But absolutely, if you can get that extra funding through another one, brilliant.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lucy. What a great answer. And yeah, I think hopefully that's lit a fire under people as well to think, okay, we could be maybe piggybacking some of this more money and reaching our target a bit quicker. In terms of something that always comes up, and you might have a take on this, Lucy, as well, from seeing different projects come through. And I know Sarah and Jasmine, you will, in terms of actually promoting that project to your networks. Have you got any kind of pieces of advice that works, maybe things that worked really well for you, or things that maybe fell actually flatter than you thought they would, in terms of connecting with that audience and connecting with your crowd? How did you go about doing that, Sarah and Jasmine?
I think before it went live, we talked about it a lot. So we kind of primed people and lobbied a little bit to say, this is what we're planning, this is what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to get match funding. If you can think about that and help spread the word. So we got a lot of information out before we went live with the project. And I think that helped us along the way in the beginning, because ours kind of went from nothing to everything very quickly. And yeah, I think it was just, we did a lot of social media, a lot of sharing, emailing links, and people were very good at then sharing on, and then it kind of snowballs, doesn't it, very quickly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think about it strategically. Kind of, you have such a short period of time to get the money in. Make sure you're having those conversations. For example, with our corporate funder who donated £2,500, they knew all about the crowd fund. They supported it. We worked together. We kind of, to make sure that we maximised the time that we had to raise those funds.
Brilliant. And what about you, Lucy? You've probably seen some really great projects coming through as well. Have you noticed any that have had an interesting way of promoting that you'd maybe not kind of considered, or any trends that you might have seen with those successful projects and how they've promoted?
I think what we've seen is that types of rewards can make a difference. So the type of reward can benefit your membership, or your regular participants, the people you see every week. There are going to be some rewards that benefit them clearly, and I think there are also those that everybody, whether they come riding to your venue, whether they come play tennis at your venue, that everybody outside of that will want to as well. So I always try and encourage people to think seasonal as much as anything. So on the run up to Christmas, the variety of rewards. Lots of people like some good baking out there, and sometimes it's your volunteers that can help. They might not want to put a pledge on your page, but they could donate a bake that everybody would want to get their paws on, kind of thing. So I think it's those kinds of rewards, those kinds of it's not just asking a business to give something. It's connecting with those volunteers as well. And like you say, Sarah, prime people all the way, particularly if they are or they could be a sponsor of the future. So if you've got local businesses that are thinking that they might dip their toe into a bit of corporate social responsibility, prime them up and get them to dump it onto the crowdfunding page, rather than them it sort of not getting matched. If they've got £2,000 like your representatives had, that's a massive chunk if they can get it match funded. It's all about timing, all about the timing.
That's really key. You're so right. And I think, yeah, warming up your crowd is really, really important. What we find as well, and you mentioned, Jasmine, didn't you, that you ran the campaign for 8 weeks? What we find is a bit of a trend with crowdfunding is you warm up your crowd, you go live, and then people are really eager to kind of put those donations on kind of first few days. Maybe you've done a bit of a soft launch and you've got some money on there already before you shout about it from the hilltops. But the first maybe week or so, it's everyone's really excited and they donate. And then you might find that there's actually a bit of a lull in the middle. And the key really is to have something in place, whether that's a good kind of plan of promotion, whether it's adding some more rewards, whether that you've got an event coming up, or there's face-to-face things that are happening in your calendar, to really keep that momentum, because it will ramp up towards the end when people see that the campaign's closing. But what you want to avoid wherever possible is actually having that real lull in the middle. So be aware of it and try and plan to kind of counteract it, and think about, well, how can we be creative and what kind of things can we do in that time to keep people engaged? Did you find that that was something that happened with yourselves over that 8-week period?
Yeah, it did. It went mad for the first couple of weeks, and then we're like, oh, it slowed down a bit. So yeah, and then we just kept emailing it and promoting it, and then it picked up, and then it really, I would say probably between weeks 5 and 7 is where it came in the most. And that was after we'd kind of gone, look, we've already got this much. Come on, guys, keep going.
Yeah, and that's what's really great if you are approved for that kind of match funding. Once that's landed and you can go back and say, well, look, actually, we were 25% raised, now we're 75% raised. Like, come on, everything you give now is going to make a real difference. That's quite an exciting place to be. But knowing that you might have a lull, I think, is really important, and not to be too disheartened, and just think how you might have to maybe change tack on how you're promoting in that time, just to keep that with that engagement. Lucy, I saw a question in the Q&A there. It's disappeared for me. Is that something that would be a good one to bring in now?
Yes, it was one of the participants asking about the length of time for their campaign. So within Movement Fund, we say, look, you can do it within up to 10 weeks. So ideally, it would be shorter. So as Sarah and Jasmine did, they were looking at that 6 to 8 weeks. 6 didn't feel quite long enough, but 8 worked for them. Sometimes having a shorter period of real focus, so the team is really focused on that crowdfunding, can really work. However, the 10 weeks that we're talking about starts from the launch of your campaign. So once you've accepted our offer, you've then got some time to start prepping your page, get it into draft, source your rewards, chat to us on the helpline. You'll be assigned a case officer from one of our team. You can exchange as many emails, phone calls, messages. That's fine. We're here to help you out. And we'll hopefully get you to a point where you're ready to launch. And at that point, the clock starts ticking. And that's where you're on that kind of that gradient of percentages of once you get to your 25% and your minimum supporters, our pledge will land on your campaign, and then you start that final rush to the finish line. So 6 to 8 weeks is brilliant. 10 weeks, that's also good. If you're getting close to that cutoff where your campaign's going to end, and you just think, you know what, we just need a few more days, or we need another week because we've got a particular event happening. I know people are going to be wanting to pledge. We can do that. You can extend it a little bit. It's not a problem. What we don't really want to be doing is getting you over that 12 weeks. That's almost too long to be really effective. You kind of want to have that concentrated period of time for your crowdfunding. So yeah, definitely, it's got to keep it under your 12 weeks. 10 is good, 6 to 8 is even better.
Amazing. And communication is key, I guess, Lucy. It's about keeping in contact with that kind of case officer. If you've got things coming up or you've hit, hurdles along the way, we all know that things happen. Just communicate with them directly.
Get in touch with us. So sort of you'll each have a case officer assigned to you. If for any reason they're out of the office, just come through to the main movement fund at sportengland.org, which email address, and myself and colleagues who are on the general help desk will be able to pick it up and help you out if someone's away. Everyone's entitled to leave, unfortunately. Yeah, although horse riding, I've been there, you don't get that much time off. It's a busy world.
We've overrun ever so slightly. We did start a few minutes late, so hopefully I'm going to keep you all for just one more minute. We've had a great question coming in, which I just wanted to cover off from Stephen. So are you able to run multiple projects? So let's say they've got a big project that they're trying to deliver, and actually they could break it down into kind of maybe 4 or 5 separate kind of projects, if you like. Would they be able to come back maybe annually, apply for the movement fund? They can definitely crowdfund multiple times. We would always kind of recommend that that's a great idea. If you've got a big project, break it down into sizable chunks and you can run kind of consecutive crowdfunding campaigns. How many times would they be able to apply for the movement fund, and are there any restrictions with that?
I think as far as the movement fund goes, we can fund any organisation with up to 15,000 in any 12-month period. So technically, there is nothing to stop you coming in a second time or a third time after those original 12 months is up. I guess you've got to have the knowledge that your crowd is willing to offer with that kind of level of frequency. We would also want to probably see development of projects. So at the moment, the crowd, sort of our movement fund is not really tailored to really big facility type projects unless you're kind of on that final rung and trying to get yourself over the line. So perhaps you've got most of it and are then just wanting that last sort of 15 to 30k at the end to get yourselves over the line. Perhaps it's for a particular priority aspect to do with accessibility or something like that. When you're looking at the refurbishment levels after the build, those might be the kinds of things. Our assessors will look on every single project individually and assess them under their own merits, closeness to our priorities for the fund, about getting those that are inactive active. But if there is an element of doing the same year on year on year without any clear I guess, evolution and expansion, they might go, hang on a minute, where's the sustainability with this as well? So although crowdfunding is promoting sustainability because you've got to get the crowd to support you as well as Sport England, if you're relying on it year on year on year, you are in effect getting 15, potentially up to 15 from Sport England year on year, and you're kind of slightly moving away from that sustainability side of things. We want to see that evolution of how it's improving.
Amazing. Thank you, Lucy. That's really a really involved answer, and I can see that Stephen's putting some comments there into the chat as well. I would suggest that if anybody's got any eligibility questions or any kind of direct questions for Sport England, then of course get in touch with them directly. Their information is on the slide at the moment, and again we'll make sure you've got access to that in the follow-up email. If you do have any questions about crowdfunding in general, you can either contact our support team or come along to one of our drop-ins. I just want to say a massive thank you to Jasmine, Sarah, and to Lucy for joining me today. It was a really great session with some brilliant information, and I hope that all of you feel a little bit more confident about the prospect of crowdfunding and accessing that match funding, and inspired to start your journeys and really get your projects underway and raise that all important funding that you need in order to do that. So thank you so much for joining us. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.